Yeah, hi everyone. Welcome to this evening's call. I've got something really special for you. Super excited. We're going to be talking about podcasting and specifically about Vicky's journey because she's making an absolute mint from podcasting. So I'm not going to steal your thunder because you've mentioned a few numbers when we spoke just a few minutes ago, but it's absolutely crazy good. So we're going to be talking about this. We're going to be talking about building your list, quality, how to get traffic, and all of this from podcasting, which is essentially a free form of traffic, isn't it? Because I know there's a bit of hosting costs and such like, but ultimately it's all about your personality and what you do with it. So with that rather long intro out of the way, good evening, Vicky.
Hello, hi Dan, lovely to be here. Nice to connect with you.
Absolutely, Vicky. So tell us a bit about yourself then.
Yeah, sure. So my background was, so we actually both went to LSE, which is fun. So I saw that in common when we connected. And my background was in finance and then in tech. And then in 2016, I left that world and went into personal development and coaching. And then in 2017, I dropped back into the startup land. And that was when I started experiencing anxiety attacks in the morning. And it went on for about 2 weeks before my partner, now my husband, said like, hey, I think something's going on. And I was like, I'm fine. No. And I spoke to friends and I figured out what was going on. And then I went to Dr. Google, and everywhere I went on Dr. Google, there was like this disorder and this thing wrong with you, and you need to take medication, you need to be fixed. And I kind of luckily had 2 weeks of having it before I went to Dr. Google. So I knew that I was actually fine. But there was no one out there speaking about how like you can be confident and anxious. Like your anxiety isn't a disorder, it's a trend, right? Like we evolved to have it. And so that's when I started my podcast, because I didn't have the bandwidth to take on more clients because of the startup, and everything that I was learning and applying was blowing my mind. So that was really, and I think that's a powerful thing for everyone watching to know, is like my purpose for starting the podcast was really give high value. I really wanted to help people. And I think that shows in the success that I've had through it.
Brilliant. I love stories. And so let's just touch on what a podcast is. So everyone knows about, so everyone thinks that you kind of get a microphone and just talk away and then it's just audio, but actually it can have different formats, can't it? Because what we're doing at the moment, Facebook Live, so that's going to go on the podcast, that's going to go on my podcast, possibly yours, YouTube. So podcasting is really just when someone's got an opinion or when someone wants to convey information to the wider world, they get on a podcast and they put it out there, isn't it? Is that a good description of it?
Yeah, like even as you were speaking, I was like, how would I describe it? I'm like, it's blogs with voice, right? It's like blogs with voice, except obviously there's the interview concept as well, which I think is really fun. It's kind of like getting, how often do we want to like hear people's private conversations? And here you go, you get to hear our conversation.
Yes, but you don't have to be interviewing someone, right? I mean, you can just talking yourself. If you have some good, like Russell Brunson, for example, who's got an amazingly popular podcast, he just comes up with ideas and he just talks through the microphone, and that's a good way to convey information, isn't it? So what I love about it is you can do it on the go. You can listen to Spotify or Apple Podcast or whatever. You don't have to be there reading, or it's just a really good thing to do multitasking with, isn't it? You're at the gym or whatever.
Yeah, so my podcast is also me speaking. It's not interviews unless it's clients, and it's always, my episodes are always 8 to 15 minutes, aside from when I bring clients on, which more people are going through now. But at the time when I started doing short episodes, I was getting a lot of opinions that I should make my episodes longer, and people want more content. And now we're seeing actually the shorter take off and fit in more as well. And I think it does make it also more bingeable. Like I hear from people sometimes, like I've listened to 27 episodes this week. Like I just love it, and I've just started it and I'm all in on it. So yeah, there's so many different formats. And even if there aren't, I would encourage anyone that's thinking about podcasting, like, what would you love to listen to? Like, another interesting thing I did was, they all have intros and outros. And for me, around episode 30, I was like, you know what? Anyone that's listened to 30 episodes has heard my intro enough. I know for me, like, I just always want to skip over it. I'm like, yeah, I know this by now. So I eliminated and got rid of the intro. And I think, again, this is what we'll speak about. Like, I think part of the reason my podcast has been so successful organically and also for my business is because I always think about what's best for my people instead of like what's best for me, or like, or what everyone else is doing. And I think that willingness to do that, I think people love it.
Nice one. And there's something really magical about podcasts in terms of conversions, because people really feel like they get to know you. There's something very intimate that you don't get in a blog. You might get in a video, but I think it's even more intimate than a video somehow. There's something about the voice that can really connect people, isn't there?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think we're going to see more of it. Like, video is going to take over, but for the while, what we want to remember is so many of us grew up speaking on the phone to people, right? Like, still, I mean, were smartphones around 10 years ago? I don't think so. I don't remember. But I don't think so. So it's still a relatively new phenomenon to speak to people over video. So we are really used to hearing people. So it really is something that we are feeling intimate with, and it does feel like it's a conversation. I know I listen to podcasts and I'm like, this person is my best friend. They just don't know it. And I've also had that feedback from people listening to my podcast where they're like, I feel like you're my best friend. Like, we speak all the time. You're with me every morning.
Nice.
Yeah.
How do you, I'm going to sort of ask you a question here, which might be a really good tip for those people listening, watching. They don't know how to start. So they like the idea of a podcast. They just don't know where to start. So how do you come up with ideas for the episodes? I mean, I know what I do because I've got a podcast as well, but it's not easy, is it? And obviously having someone there to chat to is a great help. But when you do it yourself, how do you come up with the ideas?
I have so many ideas. I need to pace myself. I'm like 3 weeks ahead right now. I'm trying to rein it in. But for me, I think it's, the first 2030 were really based on me and my experience and what I was learning and what I wanted people to learn from my experience. And then now it's really from my clients and what I'm seeing from them. And it can literally be a client can say a throwaway comment like, well, I should be doing more. And I'm like, should is a useless word. Shouldn't cost you 5 hours a week. And then I do a podcast on like how to remove shoulding yourself and the impact of it. So really, I think it's like, what if it's easy and there's loads of ideas, and then what do you start seeing when you open your brain up to like this infinite things? And I will tell you that it's happened to me 2 or 3 times that I've recorded a podcast and then been like, oh my God, I just did one on this topic 3 weeks ago, and I will still publish it because I'll just speak about that as well. But it's happened to me a few times. I think I did one called Create More Time. And then 2 weeks later, I did like, oh my God, I've got the best one. It's called Create More Time. And my husband was like, you just did that. And I was like, oh, but I was offering different tools. So it's just interesting because I do think that's something to consider. But yeah, for me, I would say get 3 ideas ahead of yourself. So if you're recording a podcast once a week, don't expect to sit down and in that same sitting, come up with an idea, record it, publish it. Like, it's way too much on your brain. So I always have like a running list. And what I do when I put it in my calendar is I put in, when I get the idea, I put the idea in my calendar. So when I go to record it, I'm like, I know what I'm speaking about today. I'm speaking about how to take 100% responsibility. I'm speaking about how to, to stop blaming yourself for things in the past or whatever.
Okay. So let's just go over some numbers. So you've got a coaching business, which is about time. It's not time management, is it? It's a bit more.
Yeah, no, it's not about time management. So I love that you said that. It's about time hacking. So we are taught how to use our time. We are taught time creates results in school, where our brain is, developed. We all move based on time and age. And when we go into the world, or particularly as entrepreneurs, because the corporate world still carries on a little bit with that. We then have built a habit around being busy and using all of our time. Add to that, we have like 17,000 different platforms. We have oodles of information. We can always be busy if we want to be busy. Busy isn't what creates success, right? Busy people are successful and unsuccessful. So what I coach people how to do is how to optimize their time on and their time off so that they can achieve more in their work, in their careers, and more satisfaction and enjoyment and pleasure in their lives.
Right. So that's a bit different to the usual sort of make money online that we have on this group. So what you just said is a really nice niche, because it's not the, it's not kind of it's full of value for people's lives, right? Quality of life. And how much money have you made in the last year?
300K.
300K. Guys, give me a number one if you think this is absolutely awesome. So this is you as a coach.
Yeah.
And that's based on the strength of your podcast. That's the main sort of form of traffic that you drive into that coaching program.
Yeah, I think what was interesting was because I launched a podcast and I wasn't able to take on clients, so I wasn't really selling. So like you said, I think I really built relationships with people. And then once I started inviting people to work with me, there was a lot of demand, right? So it wasn't like I started a podcast and on day one, I was like, I think the first one is anxiety is your superpower. So it wasn't like I taught that and then said, hey, come and work with me. It was like I really gave so much value, which I think we can do on podcasts. And so by the time I was like, hey, come work with me, there was a lot of demand already built up.
Okay, so 300K, 240,000 downloads.
350,000 downloads, yeah.
1,000. Okay, I mean, that's insane. That's so good. What which platforms do you use in as much as where do you actually upload the original episode?
So I was using Libsyn, and then now I'm using Podbean. But actually, Libsyn contacted me when I left and asked why, and it was because of technical thing. And they said actually the technical thing that I was continuing to do wasn't necessary. I do like their statistics more, if I'm honest, but Libsyn, yes, but Podbean is so easy and user friendly. I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna do the easy thing.
See, what I love about I don't know if it's a saying with Podbean, but what I love about Libsyn is the fact that once I upload an episode, it just goes everywhere. It goes onto Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Twitter, YouTube, just everywhere. So literally one MP3 or MP, I think I think I can do an MP4 as well, actually, on Libsyn. And then literally that just sends it all to all these different platforms and the traffic comes in. So what I do is probably small fry in comparison to what you do, but I get between 100 to 200 downloads per, each time I do it. I just get traffic, and I probably don't monetize it enough. I probably should have kind of more of a call to action or something. I mean, for me, it's all about brand, right? It's all about brand. And I was on a couple of calls today and people said to me, oh, we've seen your podcast. It's really cool. So it's very kind of indirect. I just give, I don't want to take.
Yes.
But arguably people do it differently, don't they? They use it as a lead magnet. They use it as even to drive traffic to a specific landing page or whatever.
Yeah, you can definitely do that. I do that. I have a freebie, a fuck anxiety freebie, because my podcast is called Fuck Anxiety and Get Shit Done. And so people can opt in for that freebie, and then they're on my email list. I also direct people to my Instagram. At one point I wouldn't do it now, but I still hear from people saying, is it still okay? At one point I was offering free calls, really play with it and have fun with it. And ultimately for me, it's like, what does my listener actually want? Do they just want to hear me talk, or do they want the help implementing the tools that I'm teaching? Because one of the things I always like to do on every single episode, firstly, I say to myself, every episode should be worth 1K for the listener. So I really try to over deliver on value. Secondly, I like to leave value and something actionable. So like everyone can implement something immediately, because there's so much content and information out there that I think we can just consume everything. And I think those things together allowed my listeners to get results ahead of time. Like I will hear from people, like I've heard from people that like my first 10 episodes did more for them than 2 years in therapy. Like really focusing on really helping people through the content to the point where they can't not share it with people. Like this is all organic growth as well. Like I've not put paid marketing behind it, but what I have done is said to people on the podcast, hey, if you like this, share it with someone you love, you know?
Yeah. So what do you think is the secret to having success? And also you said that you really care about what you do, you're giving it a lot of value, but is it possible to fake it? So let's say I want to make loads of money, right? I'm a marketer, I'm an internet marketer. Do I need to have this kind of insight where I talk, people listen to me and they think, wow, I've just heard something really insightful? Or is this something I could, let's say I want to start a podcast about dog training. Can I go and learn about that? Just check it out, go to different sites, learn everything I can about dog training, and then start a podcast. Is it as easy as that? Or do I really need to have that kind of insightful quality that people are going to be magnetized towards what I do?
Yeah, I think we forget that we have access to so much information that sometimes like the beginner mindset is best to teach the newbie mindset, right? Like it's not always true that the person that has the most exposure to a topic is the best at communicating it. And you can see this with Elon Musk when he speaks. You can see he's trying to simplify what he's saying because he knows so much that it's a whole skill that he has to train himself on. And I think if someone wanted to go and do a dog training podcast and they were like, okay, I'm gonna read up about it and I'm gonna speak about it, if they can pick one piece of value, that's the big point. Is like so often with giving information, when we don't feel like we're an expert, we try and prove it with all this information, which is not how we receive information well. And if we can simplify it, like I don't think it matters how long you've been doing something. I think it matters how able you are to communicate something of value and leave something actionable. And yeah, I think that's something interesting to think about, because we live in the information age, because there is so much information. It's not like 20 years ago when, if you wanted something, like only few people knew about it. So I think we are seeing people accelerate careers and businesses and growth at unprecedented levels. And as long as you are actually helping people, like my coach, yeah, she's been around less than 5 years and I pay her 50K.
Yeah, oh, nice one. Nice one. All right, just before we go on, let's see if there's any more questions. So does anyone have any questions about how to get started or what topics or anything like this before we continue with some of the more technical things? Specifically, I want to pick Vicky's brains about building a list and driving traffic. So that's the two next questions. But before I do any of this, let me know if you have any questions and we'll sort of make this as interactive as possible. I mean, obviously, we need to go through sort of a Q&A format. And unfortunately, I can't see all the questions as well. It's one of those Facebook Live foibles. I might just jump on my phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I'll just have a quick...
While you do that, I will tell the story of my first episode because it's a fun one.
That's a good one, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because it is strange. We are used to speaking on the phone, but I felt very strange, like actually recording a podcast episode. So I like wrote it out and was like, I'll read it word for word. And then that didn't feel right. And then I was like, I'll just speak with points or whatever. And then I recorded it and then I listened to it and I didn't like it. And then I recorded it and then I listened to it again and I didn't like it. And then I recorded it and I saw what was happening, which was I was going to spend 2 years and I still would have only got one episode. Right. So I think the willingness to put something out there without it being perfect. I don't edit my podcast or have it professionally edited. So it really does feel like an intimate chat with me. But it really is, you know, we think like, oh, I want a podcast, but we have to remember our brains are very quick to criticize ourselves. So that was quite an interesting thing. So for anyone that does it, if you find yourself being self-critical, just get it out there, let it be done instead of perfect, and then move on to the next one. And you will, I'm sure, I've not listened to my first episode for a long time, but I'm sure someone listening to my first and latest episode would see a big difference.
Okay, it's actually good. There's a lot more I can see on the phone, unfortunately, than I can on the desktop. So I'm just going to read out some questions and then we'll continue. Yeah. So Diane here, and she's one of our super users, power users, and she wants to start her own podcast. She wants to interview you for her YouTube channel.
Get me on.
And, she's asking how to start a podcast from scratch. Mm-hmm. So we can talk about this. And she used to be a DJ, community radio, but now she's an online marketer. So there you go.
Amazing.
And I think, and Brenda said she would like to start a podcast on mental illness. So maybe we can give some tips to Brenda on that.
Yes.
I mean, that's a huge topic, isn't it? And both my kids are in school and they're sort of teenagers, and that seems to be really topical at the moment.
Yeah, finally, right? Like, it's so good that we are actually speaking about these things.
Yes. Yeah. And you said that this is how you started, isn't it? Because you had some anxiety to start with. So yeah, okay. So let's answer Diane's question then. Where to start a podcast and what about? So I'm assuming, so Diane's an internet marketer at the moment. I'm assuming, Diane, you don't want to be doing a podcast about that. That's perfectly understandable. So what would be, so let's start with what about. So do you go with your passions, your interests, so how do you find a topic, and what would be the first thing that you would do in order to start a podcast?
Yeah, you just want to start, and you want to be willing to be wrong and be willing to be bad and to be willing to get 5 episodes in and then figure out what you actually want to speak about. Yeah. Typically, I would say like a great question, a great place to start is like, what's the one thing that I wish everyone knew? Is there one thing that you wish people knew more? It depends on the purpose of your podcast as well. Is it a for fun? Is it a for business? I think if you are in internet marketing, the podcast would be a great platform. And so really, like, what's the purpose behind it, and to start with? Because for me, it was like anxiety is a superpower. That's the one thing. Like, if there's one thing that everyone out there could know, that was what I wanted them to know at that point. So it became, when I was judging myself and saying, oh, this isn't good enough and I want to redo it, I was like, it's not about me. I care about people listening to this episode above caring for myself and my ego and whatever. So I would really say, know your why, which can be business, pleasure, whatever, and then start with what's the one thing, because your first episode will probably get downloaded, way more than the others. I think my first episode has been downloaded 20,000-30,000 times. So I imagine standing in a room in front of 20,000-30,000 people and being able to get that message to them. That was the exact message I wanted them to get. So it's such a good question.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Does that answer your question, Diane? So what about, I'd say something that you feel passionate about, something you can talk about, something that you want to center your professional life about. I mean, I've got loads of other things I probably could have done a podcast about. I love whiskey. I love cooking. I love walking, trekking, parenting. So the whole bunch of things you don't have to do internet marketing. And I think there's a bit of solace almost in doing something that's a bit different to what it is that you do day in, day out, isn't it? Because we drive traffic, we launch products, we do that all the time. But it'd be nice to do something that's a bit different, isn't it? Like a whiskey podcast, that would be great for me. Getting pissed on the show live, sort of trying.
It's for work. I have to get pissed. Yeah, I think so. I really would say there is no wrong thing to do. The only wrong thing to do is to do nothing. So be willing to start and learn as you go. Probably I'm going to be changing my podcast this year from fuck anxiety and get shit done into something more centered around time hacking. So, but it's like being willing to go with it and know that even 2 years in, even after 250,000 downloads, it's still like a baby step towards the impact that you want to have. So, and you could decide to have two podcasts. I also have a second podcast that started recently with a coaching peer called Coaches Unfiltered, like real, successful coaches telling it like it is, where we speak about things that no one's speaking about in the coaching industry, like being, and that's like a for fun, the two of us going after it, sharing the things that we wish we'd known, that's not necessarily super professional, but really wanting to help the versions of us a few years ago that were starting out. So, and we do that once every 2 weeks, right? So you really just get to play with it and have fun with it, I would say.
I think that's another tip you've just given us, is it's good to do teamwork with podcasting, isn't it? And you do see a lot of people group together and they have a bit of banter. You see a lot of husband and wife teams. In fact, one of the more popular ones, I think it's possibly the most popular one. It's called something like Shagged. You probably know it on Spotify. I can't remember. It's a man husband wife team, and then they just have a bit of banter about their kind of married life and stuff. So it's really good to team up because you're always going to have things to talk about.
Yeah, I did bring my husband on the podcast to celebrate 100 episodes, and it is one of the most downloaded episodes. And I want to bring him on again, but I have to, warm him into it. So maybe every 50 episodes I'll do it.
Yeah. All right, good. And the next question I have for you is, how do you drive traffic to it? I mean, is it just organic, or is it, do you do something else?
It's organic, but don't be shy to ask people to spread it. Hey, if you are listening to this and you've got value from this, someone else will get value from it. Share it with one person that you love. Make it easy for people as well. Not, like I'll always give a specific instruction, like share it with one person you love, share it on your social media. I get tagged in a lot of Instagram stories. So yeah, people have spoken about it. I used to have a free Facebook group and I deleted it, but there was one day where lots of people came in and I messaged a friend because they were speaking about Enneagram and she's an Enneagrammer. And I said, did you tell people about my podcast? She goes, no, but I'm in this Facebook group. Someone just posted about it. And it like literally like boom, 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 like loads of people directed right towards it. So yeah, being willing to try the things. I had a pop-up Facebook group. I had my free fuck anxiety guide. I celebrated 50,000 downloads with a separate podcast guide. Like always, how can I give more value and make it so that people want to share it? They're not doing it as a favor for me. I think people share my podcast as a favor to the person they're sharing it with, right?
Nice one.
Yeah.
And do you use it to build your list as well? And if so, what sort of tactics? Because this is kind of like the holy grail with us. Having a good responsive list. That's what internet marketing is all about.
Totally.
So how do you make that transformation from the spoken word onto the list?
Yep. Every email, at the end of every episode, they get an invitation to download the free fuck anxiety guide and the link to do it. I will also have masterclasses. I just did one last week. I'll do them every few months, so people will get to come to masterclasses as well, which is an opportunity to engage live with me over video, which people like. I will speak about it a lot on my Instagram, less so now. And I'll tell you what, I used to email my list with my latest podcast episode, and I stopped doing that because, fewer emails anyway. So I was just sending them fewer emails. But I was really at one point in a cyclical pattern of like, the podcast tells you to come to the email reminds you to come to the podcast. So yeah, really, I would say the one thing that I think people don't use enough is asking people to share it. It's so simple. Like, I can share it every day to my 1,000 Facebook friends, or if 5 people share it, 5 people, and they'll have like, let's say 20 engaged people on their Facebook, that's 100 people. right? And then those 100 people mention it to someone else. Like someone once told me they found me. They scheduled when I used to work one-on-one with clients. They said, I found you because I was in a yoga class and the yoga teacher spoke about your podcast, right?
Oh,
Like,
oh wow.
yeah, like we just don't know the impact of it. So I would say that is the secret. You asked me for things that people aren't speaking about online. That's something that I don't think is spoken about enough online. The simple act of saying, share it with one person you love, share it on your Instagram story, like create a post and tell me your favorite episode, whatever it is.
Nice one. And by the way, if you like this Facebook Live, do go ahead and share it.
Yeah. See, so good.
Yeah. Right. So does anyone have any more questions, boys and girls? If not, could you tell us, Vicky, where can people get hold of you if they want to find out about your podcasting or your time sort of management courses or whatever it is? So I know it's not time management.
Like anti-time management. It's like the opposite of paying attention to all the details, right? Like, so I like that you saying it because it allows me to remind people as well. So you can find out vickylouise.com, VIKKILOUISE. I'm trying to see if I can rename myself here. That might be good. I'll put it here, louise.com. So I've renamed myself. That's my website. And from there, you can click on podcasts on the top right, or you can go search fuck anxiety and get shit done. And it's F*CK anxiety. So it's spelled the polite way. Can't pronounce it the polite way. And on Instagram, Vicky_Louise___. And there you will see how I engage with my audience and how I continue to create value. And as well, on my website, you'll see time hackers on the top right. You can find out more about that as well.
Nice one. Vicky, thank you so much. You've been really generous with us this evening. Learned loads. And yeah, look forward to seeing you, hearing of you, and keeping in touch.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks everyone for coming and showing up and asking questions. And feel free to contact me with any other questions as well.
Bye.
Bye.